Those of us who call ourselves activists, community organizers, educators, advocates for our people, we've accepted a serious responsibility. We've committed ourselves to working for the empowerment, advancement, and liberation of our people, and that's noble and honorable. But there's an important question we have to ask ourselves. How do we make sure that the work we're doing actually lines up with what our community truly needs and wants? How do we avoid becoming disconnected from the very people we say we're trying to serve? If our organizing efforts are not rooted in actual community needs and interests, we can end up doing a whole lot of activity without creating real impact. We can wind up being disconnected from the very community that we're trying to advocate for. So, one of the most effective ways to prevent that type of disconnect from the leadership to the people, ask the people directly and listen to what they tell us and implement what they tell us. So today, I'm going to talk about, in a general sort of way, why community input matters, why we have to go directly to the community and find out what's bothering them, what are their needs, what are their challenges, barriers, what they expect from us. And then I'm going to share, you know how I like to film. I like to make it real. To take it from the abstract, I'm going to share a few examples from my organizing experiences to show you what can happen when we listen to the community and don't just make these top-down decisions and tell the community what it wants. Why do we need to go to the community and find out what their feelings are on issues? Well, number one, it keeps us honest. It reminds us that we really don't know what people need just because we love them. Just because we love the community and we care about them, it doesn't mean we know what they want. We can say, this is what we think the community wants, right? And we can even be right. But here's the thing. If you go out there and the community doesn't rubber stamp that, you're going to be out there on your own, isolated on an island. The leadership can't go any further than the people. If they're not aligned with that, you're not going to go anywhere. So it keeps us honest when we ask the people directly. Number two, it builds relationship and investment. When people have a voice in shaping decisions, they feel some co-ownership over the outcomes. When you include people, they're going to be more likely to feel invested in the decisions and participate, as opposed to you telling people what to do. And, there's pushback. The third thing is that when we go to the people and ask them what they want and need, it prevents us from drifting into isolation, where we end up really just talking mostly to ourselves, a bunch of other activists and organizers and leaders, and not interfacing with the actual members of the village. You're not talking to people in the village outside your organization. So it can give you a false sense of, we got a good thing here. When we go to the community and get their input, it increases the chances that our efforts will succeed, because you get buy-in. You're understanding each other. You're building relationships. The community says, wow, you know what? I've heard in my life, people say to me, that's the first time anybody asked me from an organizational point of view to a village member point of view what I wanted. The first time. People have been giving me flyers to come to their meetings. People have been telling me about events. People have been asking me to donate to campaigns, donate money. They never asked me, what did I want? What were my feelings on the issue? That changes the game. And when it's done authentically, as everything should be, it makes people feel listened to. And that doesn't mean, by the way, you have to agree with everything the community tells you or do everything, but we should always ask. The best strategies in our community organizing will always come from a blend of what we know and have studied and experienced as organizers, meshed with our real experiences, what real people in our real village. I want to give you some concrete examples from different phases of my life. The first example of soliciting the community's input. Years ago, I was at Syracuse University as an undergrad. I became president of the Student African American Society. It was the organization that represented all the Black undergraduate students at the university. So it was a powerful organization. And at this particular year, the 88-89 academic year, we mounted a big campaign to resuscitate, if you will, our African American Studies department. There were serious concerns. Now, as leaders of this Black student organization, Our executive board could have just simply decided what issue we thought our fellow students should rally around. Because there were a lot of issues. There was the issue of we weren't getting proper representation in the Daily Orange, which was the student-run newspaper on campus. We're writing, people trying to submit their articles and they're not getting their articles in. There was a radio station called WJPZ, which was student-run. We were fighting to get it. We wanted to have DJs in there hear our music, and there was a beef with that. There was protests around that. But instead, our executive board very wisely made a different choice. We went to our membership and we asked them directly through a survey, what issue are you most concerned about? What issue impacts you most directly as a Black student? What issue are you willing to fight around, protest for, miss classes for if necessary, and even if it comes to it, face punishments for? And you know what the punishments are on the college campus? Getting kicked out of school, family. That's serious. That's a serious setback, right? Hundreds of surveys went out to hundreds of our members. We had about 400 to 500 members. Overwhelmingly, 95% of the students said the same thing: rebuilding and fighting to strengthen our African American Studies Department. Because the decision came from the membership and not just from me and my executive board. Our entire organization, leadership and membership, were fully invested. They sacrificed. They fought hard at these different rallies and protests. Every week we were doing something for a whole year. That campaign was wildly successful. And it was successful for one of the main reasons, because it started with asking people, what bothers you? What do you want to do? But this is example number 2. This comes from my time working at a school that I helped to create in the Bronx called Knowledge and Power Preparatory Academy. You know, over time, the teachers and the paraprofessionals, the staff, the workers there that weren't teachers, we would meet and we would talk informally and informal meetings. And all of us noticed that wherever we had meetings, workshops, events at the school, the people that always showed up were mothers, grandmothers, aunties, or female family friends that the family gave permission to come and check up on their child. And what we found was that very rarely were fathers involved. Uncles, granddads, or male family friends, to come in and check on the kids. And at first, we as a staff, as teachers, we tried to figure out solutions on our own. But eventually, we realized something important. We said, instead of guessing, let's go to these dads and ask them directly. Let's talk to them. And some of the questions were, are you concerned about your child's academic performance and their behavior in the school? Right? Does that matter to you? Are there barriers that keep you from coming to the school? What's going on? Are there things in your life that make it difficult for you to make it to the school? And this could be anything, right? What concerns do you have about your child's education? What are your thoughts about our school, right? And based on those answers, and these were done through phone, some filled out questionnaires. We had a school worker who sometimes would make home visits, right? So all these ways we're getting the community's input. In this case, the community was the fathers of the children at our school. And based on the answers we received from fathers, and we also asked some students, how do you feel when your dad comes to a meeting or doesn't come? All these type of questions. We created new programs that reflected their interests. And we also asked the fathers, what types of activities do you like to do? What do you do in your spare time? What are your hobbies? What do you and your child do together with your boys or your girls? Right? And what we found was they had a different set of activities that they did with their sons versus the activities they participated in with their girls. These are the dads, right? We found out that some of them didn't have the money. They didn't have Metro cards. They need money to get to the school. Some of them struggled. Some of them were not in the home and had some type, some tensions with the mom. So it was a lot of things. It really educated everybody who were making assumptions about why these dads weren't there, right? Some of them were incarcerated and were not available to come. Some of them, so it was a lot of sociological things going on that these surveys sensitized us as teachers and staff members to. So this is what we decided. We started 2 new events that still continue. They are annual events. One was a father-son game night, because the father said they like to play games with their sons in the house, video game. The son said the same thing. So we said, the fathers like playing games with the sons. Okay. What do they like doing with the girls? They say with the girls, they're a little more, they like to talk with them, have little father-daughter dates, kind of a different, you see that? It's a different relationship they had with their little daughters versus with their sons. So what did we do? Father-son game night. And we had huge screens. I'm trying to give you the visual. We had the consoles they played, but the screens were huge, and we had projectors that projected the game onto the screens. This is before they had, smart TVs, families, and that's how we did it. So just imagine we're in a cafeteria, a huge cafeteria, and all around that cafeteria are 15 huge screens and consoles. And these projectors projecting it to the screens, and these fathers and their sons are competing with each other in these different games. And even there would be times when then the students would compete with each other in the games. And sometimes fathers said, no, I want to compete with that dad in the game. So and then the teachers would get involved, the male teachers. This was just for men. And because we also noticed, well, the father's deceased, or the father's incarcerated, or the father's in a whole nother state. Then we made it so that in the permission slip, it didn't have to be a biological dad. It could be the granddad, an uncle. It could be a family friend over 18 that the mom gave permission to. So that opened it up, right? Because we understood that there were things that got in the way sometimes of the biological dad being there. This was a tremendous success. Family, we could not get them fathers out the building. We had to beg them. We have to go. We have to end, family. We got to close down. We got laws we got to abide by. But you know what it did? Because the fathers, we didn't come with them with this accusatory, blaming them spirit. Oh, you deadbeat dads, you don't care about you. We didn't come from that. Because we talked to them and we found out, wow, a lot of them want to come out, but there's issues that get in the way. There's things we need to resolve. You see? So because we did that work, we found out some things that allowed us to put things in place. You know what? A lot of those fathers that came to that game night with their sons had such a great time, met the male staff, that they said, you know what? And then we had a little time, we said, listen, did you enjoy yourselves? Yes. Would you like to do this again? Yes. You know what? If we can spend time for our kids over games, that we got to make sure that we tell them we're not just here to play games with you. We also here to make sure that we prepare you for a beautiful, healthy, prosperous, abundant life, right? So those fathers committed to coming to their parent-teacher conferences, coming in every now and then and checking on them in class, unannounced, and calling us and staying in dialogue with the teachers and staff so we could update them on what's going on with their kid. Right? The second event that came out of this questioning of these fathers was they said they did different things with their daughters than they did with their sons. So we had a game night for the fathers and the sons. Game, G-A-M-E, so people don't misread what I just said. For the daughters, where dad's a little more sentimental, that's like they little girls, a different vibration. Any of you fathers or people listening have daughters, you know what I mean. You got a different sort of thing with your little daughter, your baby girl, you do with your son. You come in your son, you hit him in the ribs. You put him in a little head with your daughter, like, hey, princess, how you doing? So just a different vibe. So we had a father-daughter dance. And this was a big deal. Took the whole big gym, decorated beautifully, had tables and chairs and tablecloths, had catered food, huh? Had the teachers serving them, had a DJ playing music that they could dance to. So it was like they danced to, stuff that the kids like, that was appropriate. All the music was appropriate. And they had to dress up, right? So the daughters came with their dresses and their hair done up. And the fathers came spiffed out, huh? And we had a place where they took pictures and posed for pictures. And the daughters had a chance that there was a part where they could speak on the mic and thank their dads and say what their dads meant to them. They crying and the fathers crying. It was beautiful. That father-daughter dance, annual event. And it got to a point where some fathers had moved to a whole nother state. A couple of fathers were in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. And they would make sure that they came in to New York City, to the Bronx, to take their daughter to that father-daughter dance. Beautiful. And because of these two events and the energy it created amongst the dads and their daughters and sons, we got tremendous amounts of dads to now start coming to the school to get involved. But that success only happened because we asked them questions and we listened first instead of assuming. And the third example in my life as an organizer of the power of going to the community to ask them, to get their input, comes with my work with this nonprofit organization I was working with, where my actual job title was community organizer. And their demographic groups they focused on were, I'm going to say, low income, Black and Latino parents. That's who they worked with. And they were struggling. They were struggling when I got there. They were struggling. They were saying, we're not able to recruit a lot of parents as much as we'd like. Parents came once and sometimes they don't come back. When we go send our people to knock on the doors to get their input, nobody opens the door. They were struggling. And I remember meeting with them and talking to some of the other community organizers that worked there. And we said, man, why don't we ask the parents, what's up? Like, what would make these meetings better? Are you disinterested? Are we boring you to death? What issues are you concerned about? What are the barriers to you coming to the meetings and staying and coming back? What's getting in the way of that? Is it that you want to come, but there's things getting in the way? What would help you to stay more involved? Oh, family, the answers we got were really basic. One of the problems was that the Spanish-speaking parents, some of them didn't speak any English. So they faced serious language barriers, and they were embarrassed to have to keep coming to the meeting and sitting there for the hour and didn't know a word of what we're saying and trying to ask another Spanish parent what it was, and people was going, shh, right? So rather than go through that, they stopped coming. They said, we can't do this. We don't understand what's going on. The meetings, some said, were scheduled at the times when that mom or dad would normally be home with their kid eating dinner. And there was no food. And we asked them, well, what are the things you're interested regarding your children? And a lot of them said, our kid is telling us that they feel neglected in the school. They're feeling embarrassed in the school. They're feeling like when they raise their hand, nobody's acknowledging them, or they feel like people are not, they just get a sense they don't care. And children know. Children know if you're feeling them, if you're interested, if you're not, they pick that up. So they said we want to know, we hear about these good schools, and clearly our child isn't in one of them. We want to know what are the things that good schools do? What are the qualities of the good schools? So we can compare, so we got a benchmark. So we know what to demand in our schools where our kids are and to make them good schools. So once we understood their real concerns, because we asked them, didn't assume, now for the first time, this organization was able to adjust their approach and the engagement improved. So one of the things that happened was we were very careful about the people that we sent knocking on doors. As a matter of fact, we stopped knocking on doors completely because we had to tell, because this organization at the top was white folk who weren't the most connected to the hood and to the hood sensibility. And you had to tell, I remember having meetings and telling them, listen, from my experience, Black and Latinos do not like people knocking on their door that they don't know. They just don't like that. These cold calls, So they said, what are we going to do? So we said, well, instead of going to their home, find out the types of food and music they like and events they like for their kids, and create events in the community by where they live, have flyers up, invite them, have the things that their kids like, face painting, have the music they like to listen to. Just remember, this is Black and Latino. So the Black music, the Latino music, the types of foods, the types of activities that the kids like. And them parents are going to come bring their kids. Trust and know it. When they hear that music and smell the food, they coming out. And when they come out, you have tables all around that park or that playground. And you have our community organizers talking to them. People who can understand and translate the Spanish and write down what they say. And then we take that feedback, right, and we move on it. Engagement went through the roof. Parents were coming in, they were staying to solve the translation issue. We ordered these. It was a little pricey, but we told them this is what the research is showing us. A lot of people aren't participating simply because they don't speak English and they feel awkward. They feel embarrassed, that they got to keep asking people what are they saying. They're missing out. So we ordered these headsets. So to be like one headset was a transmitter. So we had a person who spoke Spanish that was a community organizer would sit by the person presenting, let's say I'm facilitating this particular workshop meeting. This person might sit right over to my right. They got their headset on that's transmitting what they say. The parents that are simply Spanish speaking would get their headsets, and those headsets were receivers, so they could hear this person is they're listening to me. They're saying what I'm saying in real time in Spanish, and the Spanish speaking parents with their headsets are able to hear what she or he is saying in real time. And for the first time, they're at a meeting where they know what's going on, family. They don't got to tap nobody and ask. They don't have to be talking and interrupting the meeting. So that we also had food. We said we have to have a budget for food. We have to cater dinner. Every time we have a meeting, we have to have dinner. So that happened. So once we were able to find out what was the barriers, what did they want, we taught them. And this is where I came in. I helped them develop a checklist. These are the things that good schools do. These are things that the good schools have, right? So that now they could go in the school and evaluate it. And we set up times where we would have parents come to their child's school, with a clipboard, family, and a pencil, and look to see what's going on in these different classes. These are the things you look for a teacher's point of view. These are the things you look for from a principal's point of view. So now the parents felt armed and equipped. And now the parents developed their own set of demands for these different schools in the Bronx where their kids attended. And now the parents said, okay, we want to be able to lead press conferences. We want to know how do we question these principles? That's what organizers do. Organizers don't lead. Organizers teach people to lead. It's a difference. And it was really beautiful. And we got people taken out of their positions in 3 or 4 different schools and replaced. And we got the Board of Ed to respond to their demands. And we took people who had never been in leadership positions, and now they were community leaders. People were walking with pride. The kids were proud of their mamas and their daddies for representing in the media. They saw their dad on the media, talking to the media. These are the things we want. This is why. Other schools have A, B, and C. This school doesn't have any of this, and we demand better. We pay taxes. Wow, it's amazing. In all three examples I gave you, it was about, as organizers and educators, we have a responsibility to challenge our people, educate our people, and sometimes push them out of their comfort zones. Because sometimes what we think the community should do, we're right about. Sometimes the community doesn't want to do certain things because they're scared, but they should be doing it, right? So we got to nudge them out of those comfort zones, but we got to educate them. We can't go in front and assume we got it all figured out. We still have to understand and respond to their fears, their anxieties, their needs, their concerns, the capacity, the things that get in the way of them wanting to do the things that that are important to them. And if our work doesn't connect to what our village members actually care about, if our work does not speak to their needs, fears, the barriers, the things that get in the way, they're not going to buy in. And sometimes, not only will they not buy in, come to your meeting, stay, ask to volunteer, they'll resent you and your efforts. No matter how well-intentioned you are, no matter how many books you read, how deep your conscience is. If they're not feeling you, you don't care, listen, you don't ask questions, you don't listen, you're talking over, they're trying to tell you, and you talking over them because you think you got it all figured out, you know better than the community residents. They will tune you out, and they'll talk about you behind your back like a dog. Trust and know it. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. Yes, and those of us that do listen and do ask them, they do care about them, they'll come right to us and tell us. That knucklehead dude you call it organized, I tried to tell him and he's going to tell me. So one of the most powerful ways to stay grounded is to consistently seek real world, real time, on the ground community input. To listen carefully and to let that input guide our organizing. Right? Now remember, sometimes just because somebody lives in a community, that doesn't mean their interests align with what's best for their community. You might have people selling drugs, prostituting, stealing cars, doing whatever they're doing. Their interests will not align with what's best for the community. So this doesn't mean that just because the community gives input, that we got to take everything they say, right? So there are times when we have to say, well, this input we can't follow. It's not best for the community. But the community will tell you, and you'll see patterns in what people are asking for, what they're complaining about, righteous, valid concerns. And those concerns must influence, not just we sitting listening to them and doing surveys and questionnaires, but we're actually taking what we're learning and infusing that into our organizing efforts, the things that we're working for and supporting, right? Now, because this topic is so important, and because this topic represents one of the many things I see is lacking, I'm hosting a leadership workshop on February 26th from 6:30 to about 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to be leading this workshop on generating relevant community input. Relevant, meaning the stuff that we need to know as organizers, educators, and activists to better serve our village members. And in this session, we're going to get into practical tools and strategies for gathering meaningful feedback and using it effectively in our organizing work. The donation is $20, and that includes an ebook summarizing everything we cover. If you care about making your activism more grounded, more effective, more reflective of what our community wants, this workshop is for you.